This is an open letter for Mr. Bill Maher. Bravo, bravo, Mr. Bill Maher. Great job, many years in the show business. Here's the thing. The other night, I was watching you, started watching you. The monologue was very biased, but let's put it aside. But you started interviewing Mr. Douglas Murray. And first of all, I have before we go to your interview with Mr. Douglas Murray, I have a hobo on my way. Every time I leave my place, there's a hobo on the way. Nobody knows where he's come from or where he's going, but we know he's been sitting there for a long time now. And from time to time, this hobo waves a small Israeli flag around. I was wondering if you like me to, get his contact number so you can interview him, because apparently the only qualifier to be on Bill Maher's show is to agree with Bill Maher. As a white man of European descent, basically anybody who agrees with me can attend, can be a guest on the show. And those who don't agree, and in that case, I don't care if they're not white. In fact, I prefer if they're brown and black, as long as they agree with me. Women, man, transgender, I don't care if you have horns. If you agree with me, you can be a guest on my show. And you don't really have to be anybody. You can be a hobo. As long as you agree with me, I'm willing to invite a hobo to have an interview with, as long as he waves an Israeli flag. Salute to the hobo. And all the hobos, like me. Are you kidding me, sir? Your first question, I didn't watch the interviews, frankly. Your first question, Mr. Bill Maher, was enough for me to say, oh, I've had enough, and had to move on, because I don't care for much for Mr. Bill or Douglas Murray and his views, because I don't think he has any good views. I have yet to meet a British guy with good views. British always are looking for their win. Not even their peasants. They don't even give a fuck about their peasants. Only the upper class wins, and that's a win for the British. That they still have a fucking monarchy. Anyway, some literal cocksucker, apparently he's gay. Some literal British cocksucker with no experience of anything, basically. Or if you protected carrying of Mr. Douglas into Israel and out under protection, so what, he can attest that this was enough force was used, no more than enough was used. Who is this gentleman? Again, I have a hobo who waves a small Israeli flag from now and then. Do you want to invite him and ask his why he does it and how great he is? Just because apparently, here's the thing, it's nothing about Israel. Again, I can imagine the same scenario if a British guy during the colonization of the Northern America, a British journalist or British cocksucker would have gone to the Americas and then returned back to Mother England and said, no, everything is fine. They're using just enough force to defeat the to keep the natives at bay. You know, the natives, the savages. You found a caricature of that in 21st century, and you brought him to your studio to tell you how it's good even for the natives to be subjugated, because the natives, they're not even good for themselves. We just had to, you know, dust them off the land. And I'm thinking to myself, Mr. Bill Maher, you don't really need guests. From now on, whenever you're short on guests, erect couple of mirrors around your conversation table instead of guests. You know, if you're short, you got one guest and then nobody else is showing up. If you're short, just erect couple of mirrors. Point them, make sure they're in the direction that when you look at that chair, you will see yourself and you will, you know, congratulate yourself of how this was your question, Bill Maher. To Mr. Douglas, this is the questionnaire throwing a softball to a questionee, making a statement as a question. And the statement was, our culture is not our civilization, our culture. This was you telling the questionee. You as a white man telling another white man from an original seed, you two agreeing that your culture, your civilization is not only different than everybody else on this earth, but it's better. How fucking colonialist can you be? I mean, and you got a British guy self-pleasuring, self-righteous as the British are. You would bring this fucking guy, you will say, aren't we the best? I love your dick and you love my dick. Aren't we the best? Then isn't our dick the best dick? Are you kidding me? And if I mean, this is like, you know, two white guys from Europe, you know, just having a chat, basically, literally, figuratively sucking on each other's dick. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, dude, you gotta be to find a better way, Mr. Bill Maher, we converse not only with the people who look in the direction we are looking at, in order to make the best choice. Imagine you're trying to find a way. And you've reached on top of a hill, and you're standing more or less in a circle with your two other friends. You're lost on top of a hill with two other friends. If you only agree with the and imagine the three friends are standing back to back in a triangle, and each one is looking at a different direction. And apparently there is no definite solution to this, because there is no civilization anywhere that they in any can see. Now, to say that one can say that I'm going to is in this direction with whoever agrees with me because I know this is right, without actually asking the other two that what do they see. You see what I'm saying? What do they see? Maybe what they see is looks a little more civilized. There's a smoke there at least. You know, you want to go towards civilization when you're lost. So you're looking for a smoke, maybe a building, anything that resembling man-made structure. To do that, you have to get the perspective. You're not God. You don't see all the perspective. In fact, because you don't want to see all the perspectives, because it's not beneficial to you or your promoters to see certain perspectives. You're seeing this. Basically, you're saying that's a land without people, for people without land. That's the direction you're looking at, and somebody else is standing like, 120 degrees or 60 degrees 60 degrees on your side, and he's seeing a whole bunch of people. There is no, the land had people, has people. He's seeing the people. Apparently you're looking somewhere that there are no people. So without you conversing with somebody who doesn't have your perspective, then maybe you can come to some sort of a solution. But the thing is, this is my beef with the progressives. I don't blame conservatives for anything. If you don't have enough information, you become conservative. You go with what you know. If you don't have enough information, you become conservative. Because frankly, conservatives are, more or less, the ones who like to conserve what is, because they know what is. They don't know what that is, and they're not uncomfortable going towards that. So they like to go with what is, because that's what they know and that's what they're comfortable with. Why they don't know more about that is because of your educational system is not very productive. No good food, no good information. You overcrowded classes with teachers who didn't graduate at the top of their class. Let's put it this way. So many, and you see the results. My point is this, that what is the objective here? Why I'm disappointed? So as far as conservatives, I don't mind them. This is people who know what they know and they're comfortable going where they're going. What I am disappointed is the progressives. Why? Because they know the truth. They have enough information to know the truth, but they still push a lie for a buck. They're still willing to push a lie for a buck. This is the problem with progressives that you have. Those who are pretending that they're progressives. Because progressive people would be humble people who don't leave office a millionaire. I mean, from all Republicans and Democrats, they've all been in the office and they have all turned into millionaires. That means you have got more of your mind on your money than on the collective's business. When you're a senator and you become a millionaire over time, or a representative and you become a millionaire over time, that means you got more of your mind on your money than you have on people's business, on the collective's business. So my point is this: these progressives who have become millionaire, that means they weren't progressive. They're not progressive. They have sold their soul for a few bucks. What kind of progressive is that? A progressive person is very humble and very normalish. A progressive person is, doesn't want to be known. That's a progressive person. If you want to be known, have a name, and accumulate a lot of things, then cannot call you progressive. So what is missing in Uncle Sam's land, I think, is a real progressive party which is humble and, and everybody who goes in signs a pledge that I'm not going to have any more money than my income from this job. At the end of the day, if you go through my business, you won't find any more money because of this job. A congressman or woman should, if they're not using their insider information, their rate of win and loss should be the same as average public. But it's not. So that means they're using extra information that the rest of the public doesn't have. That's called insider trading. My point is this: these people are not progressive. Progressives are not after money. And there was a president of Ecuador, I think, or Bolivia, one of these small countries, Latin American countries, the guy in office was driving around in a Volkswagen or a car similar to it, an old beat up one. That's a progressive. That says I'm not really, I like that money to go towards the education of the children in my land instead of going for a fucking $1 million car to take my ass around. That's a progressive. If you're not that, you can't claim to be progressive. Whatever you are, you're not progressive. That's the problem. There is no progressive. Bill Maher tries to impersonate a progressive, for example. I'm sorry, if you don't speak to people you don't agree with, you don't have any claim on progressiveness. Bill Maher should, Kid Rock, Bill Maher. Apparently, it's the same, as we can see, that it's same perspective. The perspective of, it's a destructive perspective as a Bill Maher. If your perspective is that taking land because you claim some kind of historical claim on the land, if you go back enough, this is what a progressive understands. Progressives supposed to be the ones that are informed and they don't lie. So I'm thinking Bill Maher understands, Mr. Bill Maher, I think you understand the correct answer. But you keep pushing on the wrong answer because I guess that's what pays the bills. Because I don't think you don't have the mental capacity to think this line of thought, that I have an ancestral claim on this land because my ancestors, every one of us have some kind of can have some kind of ancestral claim over Africa. That doesn't mean it's justified or executed or should be executed. Yeah, we all came from Africa. Way back when. Really? This is a colonialist, white supremacist, colonialist idea that, we can claim to have had the deed of the land 3,000 years ago, then it's ours now. Because we had a deed from 3,000 years. This deed has changed hands 500 times since 3,000 years ago. Now you're just trying to force a deed. That's piracy. That's highway robbery. Any real progressive, understands that if you don't have the last deed, you don't have a deed. The last deed in the eyes of the law, whoever the fuck is the law, the last deed is the most, if it's the true deed, if it's, it's the most justified deed possible, because according to the laws and rules, this last change hand at this date, preferably not at the force of a gun. Those who force the gun, way back when, if they have, you've been so away from so long away from the land. Your ancestors, all our ancestors used to live in Palestine, because Palestine is the first place. Once you pass Africa, you have to stay on the other side of the shore. However you pass the Suez Canal with a boat or a raft, however you pass as a primitive humans, however they pass, they land on Palestine. First, the Sinai desert, and then it's Palestine. So all our ancestors passed through there. A progressive knows this. You know this, Mr. Bill Maher. This is simple history. This is simple history of where humans came from, and it's all documented, more or less. Claim of ancestry is not a good claim. It's not a fair claim, because then you have to leave your home and hand the keys to the Indians, to the Redskins, however few of them are left, if that's the measure. But you're not willing to do that, but you're willing to take over new land based on an older claim. No, the old claims are not valid here, but the old claims are valid there. You understand on this, Mr. Bill Maher? This is the problem of, people trying to impersonate progressives. You understand this logic. I'm not explaining this to Joe Hobo with the Israeli flag, because Joe Hobo with the Israeli flag, he likes bishop this and preacher that. Therefore, that preacher told him that this is a good flag and this is the flag of our people, and keep waving it. Okay, you're not that, mister. You are a progressive who at least has the basic information. You understand that logic is a weak logic, to say the least. You understand that, but you pretend that answer doesn't exist. You're pretending that the correct answer doesn't exist. That no, the people of West Asia, who, the first qualification is they have to fucking be brown under that sun and arid climate. They have to be brown to survive. That simple fact is lost on you. That simple fact is lost on you, apparently. So you're like, no. These very white people who happen to be Ashkenazi from Northern Europe, these very white people have some kind of historical claim on this land, and they should have it. The people, land without people. Dude, you turn around 60 degrees, the view is totally different. There are people there. There were people there. There are people there. You turn another 60 degrees, there are also people there. You see what I'm saying? You keep turning 60 until you reach the 360 degrees, and you're like, okay, yeah. I'm sorry, not 60 degrees. 360 divided 120. You take 120 degrees each angle, and you get three different views from the same position. Your position is a position of old white man who is comfortable with colonial projects. Just now, I was listening, I saw the news on Twitter, and Blue Sky, that there's an army general. He just happened to be black. DEI is basically very rich white people trying to put together an army of different colors, complexions, so their colonial conquest wouldn't seem so racial. Again, DEI with regards to the army and navy and whatever, our military forces, DEI with regards to military forces was a way for rich white people to put together an army that contained all different shades, so when they do colonial shit, doesn't look racial, it just looks colonial. But we all know it's racial colonialism, because the main beneficiaries of all these colonial activity are white people in Wall Street. I'm sorry, and two brown guys and one black guy. But all the people in Wall Street, the real winners are really rich old white folks. Or those white folks who really want to be rich old white folks. So let's go give it to them. Not my mailman. My mailman has not won anything after Vietnam, after Korea, after didn't benefit him one bit Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. My mailman didn't get shit out of that business, and he's wondering why. It's a joke. He's not. He, he doesn't know I'm talking about him, but he didn't get anything out of that shit. A few rich old dude in Wall Street got a lot. Now they're handling all of Iraq's income from oil, so they are getting a lot out of the deal. So you need an army. These rich old white folks who want to, be on top. They need an army that's multiracial. So wherever they do colonialism and push their agenda, doesn't look racial. It just looks colonial, but not racial. Because people apparently, associate the two together. Because the last time the colonialism business was very racial. Now they're trying to make the colonialism not look racial. So what I mean, just saw a testimony by apparently American American general, who seriously advocated that, the guy in Burkina Faso, the guy in charge in Burkina Faso, who apparently wasn't chosen by Uncle Sam's managers, he is not good for his people. We should go take care of him. Now, this is the same people who actually put very incompetent and thievish people in place. So in other words, the guy in charge of Burkina Faso right now, if he had a bank account in New York or Paris, he wouldn't be in trouble with white people, with rich white people. He wouldn't be in trouble, because, he's doing exactly what is expected of him. I mean, Idi Amin and any African leaders that, Assad and any Western, not Assad, the king of Georgia and his family and Saudi Arabia, they all have their bank accounts in New York and London and Paris. So the guys who are actually doing the thieving are not accused of anything. But the guy who doesn't have these bank accounts in these capitals, he is accused of misdoing. Nobody has seen him in his own castle. Nobody has seen him in his very humble guy trying to do best for at least his tribe. And what happens in the white people, rich white folks bring together these politicians and promise the politicians that they will also be rich. So the politicians are doing their best for the rich guys so they can also be rich. And those rich people tell these politicians who want to be rich people that here is a black general of African descent, and he will tell you why we need to go to Burkina Faso. He's a general, he's part of a group of generals who, have, corporations who basically provide them with a lot of weapons and very close relationship, and everything is, national security, so everything is very expensive and very hush-hush. And behind the scenes, the very rich people who own these corporations have told the military that, yes, don't you want to go and save those people? And the military says, of course we need to go save them. So the military sends in because the objective is attack Africa, a country in Africa. So they bring in, the blackest guy in the military that they can find, and say, okay, you got good color complexion, Come on in. You sit down and tell them why we need to go to Burkina Faso. This is same colonial shit, and the general tells the politician that yes, we need to go to Burkina Faso, and the rich people who actually send in the general, those rich people also tell the politician, oh yeah, so you form this circle from rich people to politicians to the military industrial complex. The rich people are the industrial, the military, and the glue in the hair is the politicians. And the politicians are they also want to be rich, so they have to play ball. So you have this circle that stand together and agree with each other that why they should go and save another group of people, this time in Africa. And it just happened that Burkina Faso produces a lot of gold, and the French have been extracting the gold there, and these Africans basically apparently just kicked the French out, and they want to run themselves, and none of them, their leadership has any bank accounts in Paris or London or New York. So there's a problem. We are not getting their gold, and they're not banking with us. We don't get the gold, and we don't get the profits from the gold as we do with Saudi Arabia, for example. We don't get the gold, and we don't get the profits from the gold. That's not happening, not under our watch. There is something wrong in Burkina Faso, and we need to go and fix it. Okay. This is, I'm sorry, you said, how you put it, Mr. Bill Maher? Aren't we are not just a different culture, we are a better culture. And this you're asking Douglas Murray, a British guy who decided that they have the right to go around the world to try to bring British culture to everybody else because apparently theirs is better. Mr. Bill Maher, technology is not culture. A better technology doesn't mean a better culture. It's exactly as you said, they're different culture. They're not better, they're not worse. They're all there. It's a culture has to do with a lot with the climate, with the food, with the tradition, with poetry, with their sagas, with their books and writers and their experience, their generational cultural experience, their generational experiences with the climate and the food and the available amenities in their geography. They have come up with a culture. You as well. There's nothing better or worse. This is who you are, this is who they are. Yes, they're brutal. Yes, they're brutal. That goes with the hot climate that they're fucking in. A lot of it has to do with the fucking hot climate and lack of resources. Have you noticed that before oil, these fucking people were very poor because it's not a really, fruitful climate in the Middle East. You take the oil out, it's not very fruitful. The soil is not that great to grow things on, and the weather is not that generous with the rain. No rain, no rivers, no greenery, poverty all around in the Middle East without the oil. So being brutal is one of the solutions for poverty. In order to keep order, when everybody is doing okay, it's not that difficult to keep order. But when poverty hits, it becomes very difficult to keep order. That's why the poor part of town, traditionally the black neighborhoods in the United States and the Mexican neighborhoods where these gangs came about, was because it's more difficult to provide order where there is poverty. So the lack of order comes after poverty and ends in riots. So the poverty is the basic reason for it. So these are impoverished areas of planet Earth, it's now you, instead of helping them, you go bomb them. Why? Because now they have an oil we like. Without the oil, we don't give a fuck about any of them. But now they have oil and it has to be part of the world economy and world market. Everybody needs oil, and now we need to go and teach them how to be civilized, how to speak English and have democracy. To the Sane Society. Mr. Bill Maher, brutality is not, you can't say one culture is more brutal, so it's worse than mine. One is more fruitful. Is that better than you? You know, the Afghan reproduction rate is 3 times your reproduction rate. Does that make them better than you, or you better than them? The only difference that I see is that is, you know, concerns me is the brutality. They have a brutal culture. The main reason, the poverty, the general poverty of the Middle Eastern environment. And again, all wealth comes from land in terms of agriculture. If you have good agriculture, if you can feed a lot of people, that's the first step of having a lot of people, is to have the ability to feed them. If you can't feed them, even if you want to have a lot of people, you can't. So they have a impoverished land, they have a brutal culture, and all they've seen from you is brutality. To the Sane Society. Brutality on your part for the oil, on they show brutality to each other because of the general poverty of the environment, and you go in and you show them brutality for the oil money. I'm sorry, you were saying something about our culture is better? Mr. Bill Maher, please, you have to get a couple of mirrors. Erect a bunch of mirrors around your table when you're sitting on your real time. And if I had to, you know, if I had to draw you sitting around your table, I would draw you and your guests all looking at exactly at the same direction. It's like I would draw a series of parallel lines on paper and show you the problem with you as impersonating a progressive on TV, but with very regressive and colonialist ideas. I would just you only invite guests who exactly agree with you. But doesn't matter if they're brown, black. If in fact it's better if they are brown and black, and then they agree with an old white colonialist dude. That would be even better. But if not, I'm not willing to go with any brown people or black people who don't agree with me. I'm not even going to go with any white guy that doesn't agree with me. I'm going with anybody who agrees with me. I'm going to be generous 99% of the time, at least with regards to foreign policy. Agrees with me 99% of the time. And that's the thing. What you agree with, you know, probably what you agree, your agreement with conservative is all foreign policy. Domestic policy, you totally disagree with the conservatives. But mostly disagree with. Before, you could say you disagree with their domestic policy, but foreign policy is the same. What does that mean? What does that tell you? That tells you that there is one accepted perspective, and that is this way, which says that's a land without people. Not that many people anyway. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Palestine, Vietnam, Congo. That's a land, Namibia, that's a land without people. You're not seeing people. If you have a conversation with, if you, and this is, I'm saying all of this, not that you don't understand this. That's my problem with those who impersonate progressives, which is most of the NPR too. Most of NPR impersonate progressives because, you know, a progressive wouldn't even want to doesn't even demand $500,000 a year to speak in a microphone. That's a very self-righteous, selfish individual who collects a lot of money impersonating progressives, while having no opinions or protesting about any of the crazy colonial acts that has been happening, and just reads the news and gives a general opinion that Hobo Joe has. Now, Hobo Joe thinks this. There are many of these Hobo Joe Ukrainians that NPR interviewed during the past 2 years, 3 years. Many of these hobos that NPR has interviewed in Ukraine, and we have heard their interviews on there. All Joe Hobo. It's like they found a Joe Hobo who doesn't know anything about their own history, or is a Nazi or half Nazi, or his cousin is a Nazi, have some crazy ideas about, you know, land this and land that, and you know, some senators from across the planet went over there and started funding them. This is the thing, that when the standards come down, when you know you're going the wrong way, that you have to start, you know, bringing Joe Hobos just because the Joe Hobo agrees with you. So no, I don't care if this guy is a intellectual or has some kind of a, you know, good honest history of respectable encounter with his environment. I don't care about that. I don't care about his expertise. Joe Hobo. Yeah, as long as he waves an Israeli flag, I'm in. Bring him to the studio. Let's have a talk. Salute. And I'm thinking to myself, and this has happened to your social media on this planet as well. And I'm not welcomed apparently on any of them. Because you like talking to yourself. I saw the other day Mr. Musk like a show, a program, a podcast, in which the guy was saying that no, white people weren't that bad in Africa. All of it is myths. They're all myths. They weren't that bad. They put their name on those countries. They created those countries. They herded the people of those countries into borders within borders and gave them identity of some kind of identity. A British identity. They collected a bunch of tribes and taught them English. Salute. Isn't our culture is not it's not just different, it's better. No, sir. There are no better cultures. In fact, in your culture, if one had to evaluate your culture based on the number of wars that you've been involved in overseas, not defensive war. When you're overseas, you're offensive. I don't care how many, you have an ally, you have a dot on the map, that's your ally. We had a joke, very old joke, humorous, not a joke, a humorous short interaction, very old. The guy sells a house and puts a nail in tells the new owner that I'm selling you this house, the whole house, for this amount of money. However, I'm gonna put a nail here, and this nail is mine. I'm going to want to visit this nail because I sold you the house, but this nail on the wall is mine. I'm keeping it. The guy who's buying the house is like, okay, whatever, your nail. So the guy buys the house and sits in the house with his family, and he's noticed that starts from day one, once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, this gentleman comes in the house and says, I'm here to visit my nail. So he goes in and stands by his nail and looks at it and touches it, and once in a while he pops in the bathroom and says, hey, I got to take a leak too. So he takes the leak, and then once in a while he pops into the kitchen and grabs the homeowner's wife's ass as well and say, hey, mistake. The point is this, that you befriend a small island like Taiwan and you say, this is our friend, and because this is our friend, we have the right to protect them. Who gave you that right? Oh, I'm sorry. Our penis is better. That's the idea. The idea that our culture is better. This is what I mean when I say impersonating progressives. Mr. Douglas Murray, as another person who's impersonating an intellectual. Somebody has written a book and put his name on it, and now he's impersonating an intellectual. I'm sorry, if you were an intellectual, you would be dumbfounded with the idea that some white people want to go live in a very sunny, harsh environment of Mediterranean, where their skin, it was not meant to be in, because the skin keep getting sunburn because they can't stand the sun. You're standing by the idea that yes, these people who actually can't stand the environment of this harsh environment should be here, have the right to be here, and kill the natives in order to be here. I'm thinking to myself, I mean, one colonialist minded white guy, Bill Maher, talking to another colonialist minded British guy who, when were the British ever not for a new war? The British main objective is eliminating their own peasants, because they're an island, they cannot handle too many people. So their first objective is eliminating as many of their peasants as they can in new wars, just to empty the island a little. Imagine how bad the British have treated their peasants, that their peasants were willing to cross an ocean, kill a bunch of natives in order to be able to live on that land away from that British rule. Imagine how bad you have to treat your peasants in England, in France. Imagine how bad you have to treat your peasants, that your peasants love to actually go live in a jungle and kill the natives in order to survive, just to be not in England, not in France. Just so they won't be there. All these peasants from these countries were driven out. They were flying out. That's why the Statue of Liberty says about that. You mean you're tired and you're sick? Why were they tired and sick? Because there were European peasants who were being treated like shit by the ruling class. They still are. Just like the ruling class in Uncle Sam's land now are treating the peasants like shit. And Mr. Bill Maher says, yes, no problem. Peasants, it's okay for you to be treated like shit. However, our colonial conquest in West Asia should continue. To the progressives. That's why I don't blame the conservatives, because these people who pretend to be progressives have played the game so bad, have got into too many wars. The progressive have okayed, put a stamp of approval on all these colonial conquests that cost Uncle Sam's land a lot of money. And these colonial conquests were by no means progressive acts. They were sold as progressive acts by the likes of NPR and Bill Maher. These colonial acts was sold as good acts by the likes of NPR, by the likes of Bill Maher, the people who pretended knew better, but sold imperialism, colonialism, as doing good for the natives. Now Uncle Sam's managers are out of money. Now the rest of the world has to pay more. Pay Uncle Sam more, because Uncle Sam has got a couple of wars coming up. Israel war costs money. Ukraine war costs money. Uncle Sam has expenses. The rest of the world has to pay. Maybe Uncle Sam should not have so much expenses. Do you have to start every war?